On today's episode of the DeRaud-Messinger Show, Dylan, we have the big game in the big house. Yes, we're talking number 3, Texas versus number 10, Michigan. Longhorns fans, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. It's greatly appreciated. And the basic game info, as always, Dylan. The game is Saturday at 11 a.m. Central Time. The game will be on Fox, which means unless anything unexpected happens, we're getting the Gus Johnson, Joel Klatt call, which we all deserve, Dylan, in this great life of ours. At least one of these every season. But, there's a shakeup in conferences and TV. I'm not going to get into that, so we might not get as much as we should. The game is, as I said, at Michigan's big house and Ann Arbor. Texas is favored by 7.5 points. And I must apologize before we get into it because Dylan is wearing Michigan gear. If you haven't clicked off already because of that, we appreciate it. He's a lifelong Michigan fan, was very happy about their championship win last year, but also told me off camera that he's expecting Texas to win by 40 in this game. So Dylan, what group what group are you expecting to have a big matchup from in this game?
Well, Devon, if Texas were to win by 40, hypothetically, it's going to start with the pressure that they're going to be able to get to Davis Warren or not get to Davis Warren because this offensive line, it's got all the talent that's needed, Devon. The offensive line coaches in general on the offensive side, specifically Sharon Moore as well, who has an offensive line background. They are trying to figure it out. During the Fresno State game, if you were watching, they were switching in and out when it came to offensive linemen, trying to figure out who paired well with who and really trying to get a feel because you can only do so much in practice. Game time, that's completely different. And you saw that with Fresno State as well as when it came to the running backs. You had Donovan Edwards, Devon, gracing the cover of College Football 25, but not having his best of games. He had 11 carries for 27 yards, but that's after starting the game with that reception touchdown. Michigan up 7-0. So the offensive line, it's going to be my number one position group to highlight here because if Michigan is going to win this game against Texas, it's going to be winning how they did last year, and that's behind the offensive line and allowing their running backs to kind of get into space. And with Mullings, honestly, he doesn't really need space. He'll just run through you. They're going to need to be getting into that third quarter, fourth quarter after running the ball consistently in the first half for him to start to wear down this Texas defense. And it's going to start again with that offensive line and how Michigan wants to win these games.
I just was wondering, Dylan, and of course, jokes. Dylan's been talking trash about Texas. He does not think they're going to win by 40, if you guys caught that last one. I made a point of that, Dylan. I apologize, okay? I'll just get a little riled up. But how concerned would you be heading into this game if you're the Michigan sideline about that Michigan offensive line against the Texas defensive line, knowing that, of course, there's a lot of talent for Texas, but has shown not inability, but just not the greatest strength in terms of actually getting to the quarterback. They've created plenty of pressure. But then Michigan, not too experienced up front this year. Cause of concern there?
Well, of course, it's a concern because that's what Michigan did so well. They were behind Washington. They were one of the best offensive lines in college football last year, and now they've lost the majority of those guys, if not all of them, on that offensive line, and that's how they were winning those games. And I believe personally, J.J. McCarthy is one of the best quarterbacks to ever grace of football, but he didn't have to do much because of that offensive line. And now you've got a walk on, redshirt junior in Davis Warren, who they're also splitting snaps with Alex Orji. So already, you never really want to see quarterback splitting time unless you got a blowout and you got Arch Manning going in there. But that's a completely different thing. But for Michigan, it is a concern because they're going to have to rely a bit more on the passing game, but that's suspect coming off Fresno State just with accuracy concerns and the type of reads that Warren was making. But again, first time starting.
Yeah, and just to jump in continuance of what you were saying, Donovan Edwards, maybe not the most snazzy of games week one. However, for Texas and for Michigan, as you were also talking about, that's a position group battle to be watching. That's the one I highlighted at number one on mine as well. Just Michigan, the inexperienced, can they protect their guys but also make some push for Edwards? Because Edwards, at the end of the day, I might be a little jumping ahead of myself in terms of X factors, but he is the guy for Michigan here. And for Texas, they're going to have to be able to plug up the run, which they did last year quite well. We were talking about strengths of teams last year. Last year, that was the strength of the Longhorns. They've lost a lot of talent, of course. Can they do that here again? Now, Dylan, in terms of Texas offense, how are you feeling about that snazzy, yet again, use that word again, snazzy matchup? That's probably really the marquee matchup here of the wide receivers for Texas versus the Michigan secondary. Of course, last weekend, Matthew Golden got on the touchdown column. Silas Bolden got on the touchdown column. Isaiah Bond got on the touchdown column. All the transfer wideouts for Texas there. But Will Johnson heads a great secondary for Michigan. Are you feeling semi-confident in that, or is it also going to be a coin toss for you?
Well, I'll get more into that in the X factors, but when you look at it at the surface level, Michigan plays a lot of man. That's what they're going to want to do. They also brought in Wake Martindale from the Giants, Devon, former NFL defensive coordinator, to take over on the staff, just with Harbaugh taking everybody. And he's going to be wanting to do the same thing, and that's blitz the quarterback and leave his secondary on islands. And that's why they go out and get guys, whether that's in the portal, but more specifically when they're are recruiting, to get guys that excel in those man coverage so that their defensive linemen can just pin their earbacks and go, as well as their linebackers. So that's it's gonna be interesting, right? Because that's what, on paper, if you look at Texas, you'd be like, wow, yeah, they're gonna feast on man coverage just with the speed that they have, probably the fastest receiving core in the country. But it's gonna be different, and I can get into that later. But this defensive line of Michigan, Devin, it's gonna come down to, does Texas even have time to be able to sit back and wait 3 seconds to throw the ball, or they're already gonna be smothered?
Yeah, and that's the last point I wanted to make in the scouting report, Dylan, is that last position group battle that you're hinting at there. The Texas offensive line versus the Michigan front. Now, I'm not going to lie, guys. Dylan and I fired up some college
In
football.
this one.
We fired up some college football video game, and Dylan's D-line was not letting me do anything, whether that be pass or run the ball. And he did beat me. I'm going to admit, Dylan, I'll give you some props over here. I know it's rare coming for you, especially on a video form. I like to be diligent when giving Dylan credit, fairly so, I think. But just the combo really of Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham up front, Dylan, those two guys are really all you need. But then they have other guys like Josiah Stewart on the edge, along with the linebacker core that's pretty solid. The Texas O-line did their job. Of course, it was a blowout win last weekend, Dylan, against Colorado State. But still, in terms of position groups, probably wasn't the one you would highlight in the top one or two in terms of performance. So Michigan, Dylan, defensive front, lightly, because I know you're going to just start salivating. Lightly, how do you feel in that battle?
Texas is about to get a taste of their own medicine of what other teams felt last year when they had Byron Murphy and Devondre Sweat, because that is what Michigan has this year when it comes down to Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, who are first round talents and some of the biggest boys you're ever going to meet, especially on the defensive line, with how they're able to move people. And it's important because Jake Majors, for how great he is, right, it's going to be a true test up front. Not saying he can't do it, but these interior offensive line for Texas, they're going to have their work cut out for them, because that's where Texas is going to go. And the biggest points of emphasis are going to be, can they get Jadon Blue to move the ball in Michigan? Because if they become one-dimensional and Ewers has to sit back and throw, that's when it can get bad. Because if we're talking about Ewers' weak points, it's when he gets rattled and doesn't have the same amount of time in the pocket. And Michigan is designed to be a weakness for Texas. It's just for Michigan, can they generate any points on offense? That's the biggest thing going into this game.
Now, Dylan, for X factors, I know we talked about some groups that are X factors, but we're going to narrow it down to players here. And the single most important, Dylan, if you're able to do that, I'm putting you on the spot here. I'll answer on my end first. For Michigan, as we talked about, Donovan Edwards at running back. I really think this game ride and dies on his performance against the Longhorns. Dylan, I think the lower scoring this game will be more in favor of Michigan. Now, Donovan Edwards, of course, running back, you want to milk the clock a little bit, get your yards, fall forward, and score at the end of the day. Edwards is the guy to do it. Dylan mentioned the cover boy of college football, but the other X factor I have for this game is the other cover boy, and Quinn Ewers on the Longhorn sideline. As Dylan was saying, there's going to be quite a bit of pressure against Ewers in this game. Can he stay still in the pocket, Dylan, and deliver in the face of all that adversity, literally? He's got the wide receivers to do it. However, it's not an easy secondary he's facing. As we said, Michigan's guys are going to be able to read coverages like no other, Dylan. They got some resources that other teams don't have. In terms of film room, it's all, of course, the same. But Will Johnson, no matter how good of a throw you think you have, Dylan, it probably isn't as good as you think it is with him back there. So Quinn Ewers, he's got the talent. He's got the just sheer guys around him, even though there's not a lot of carryover. But if Texas wants to win this game, Dylan, even with Jadon Blue back there, I think Blue's going to be important, but I think for Texas, this game is going to be predicated semi-ironically on the passing game. So, Dylan, how do you feel about my X factors, and who are your X factors?
I mean, it's fitting that's going to be on yours' shoulder because he already made the comment about playing the team up north, already going out of his way to state how he used to play for
Which
Ohio
you
State,
really
Devon.
like bringing that up. You bring that up like
I
three
think it's
times
funny
past
because
week. Yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine how much that can help motivation-wise for me. Not that they need any more motivation, right? Just with the talent that Michigan has
If you're
defensively.
motivated by
But
someone saying that, then you have a
listen,
sad motivation psyche. I don't know.
viewers didn't have to say it. I'm just saying, like, it's not a big thing, but it's one of those things where, a lot is said just by simply bringing it up, right? No one asked him about it. He brought it. He felt the need to bring it up, right? So there is something there. He's thinking
A
about it when it
lot
comes
is
to Michigan.
said literally by bringing it up. That's called speaking, Dylan. That's what.
I'm just, but exactly. But he's obviously
This is
thinking
how
about
we
how he went to
rile
Ohio
Dylan up.
State.
We just talk about
It's
Michigan a
just
little
saying,
bit. This is what
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
have
And
to
it's
deal with on the daily. But Dylan, X
well,
factors.
this is where the X factors come in, and it's going to tie with yours, but also with this Michigan defense outside of the front seven. And you're going to be looking at Jair Hill opposite Will Johnson, right? And Zeke Berry, who the coach has been talking up all offseason, playing nickel cornerback with just his maturity level and how he's able to have patience when it comes to coverage, specifically man, right? Because he's going to be covering a lot of the guys coming out of the slot. And with Michigan, again, playing with a lot of disguised blitzes and leaving guys on man, in man coverage, Will Johnson's going to be covering Bond for the majority of the game. Maybe they try to switch it around. Sark's probably going to try to get creative and get Bond in different, not Bond, yeah, Bond in different spots, maybe to match up against Hill or sometimes Zeke Berry. And that's where they're going to come into play because Will Johnson, he's only going to be able to cover one side of the field. It's going to be the rest of the secondary as well. So those are going to be big. And I think, Devin, when it comes down to it, if Texas is able to get a receiver over 100 yards against the secondary, I think it's likely that UT is gonna ultimately win this game. But if they're not able to take advantage of those other matchups, right? Because Will Johnson can be able to take whoever he's covering out of the game for the most part in this matchup. It's gonna come down to everyone else. I mean, Wingo showed what he's able to do. It's just going into the big house as a freshman. It's a whole different ball game. It's not playing at home against Colorado State. So curious to see how Wingo shows up because he showed that he could be the wide receiver too, even as a freshman, but as well as Hook and Golden, how they're going to be able to do.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any freshman that I don't have doubts about. It is Wingo. Now,
Yeah.
him trying to chip his way into that wide receiver 2 label that I know you're not saying he is wide receiver 2, but you play like a wide receiver 2. Him making his way towards that is what's to watch, and it's going to be curious to see how much he plays against Michigan. As you said, it's a big environment for any player, nevertheless a freshman. Now, Dylan, we're going to the next level here. We're talking danger level. I know you want to give it a high rating. I understand. That's okay. It's your prerogative. I'm not going to go too long into this, but I'm giving it an 8. I think it's still too early to see where, of course, both teams end up at the end of the year. Texas has had all the media hype heading into the year. It looks like they're destined, Dylan, if they steady the ship over the course of the year for the playoff. Michigan, though, same way in the Big Ten. But Dylan's going to fight me here. Is Michigan the championship winner from last year? Of course, it's going to be a no because Texas also is not the college football playoff appearance winner. Well, not even a winner. Appearance E of last year. No, these are two different teams. But with that being said, I have it at an 8. It's the big house. We talked about Michigan's defense in general is just way too good to undersell here. And then offensively, if Donovan Edwards figures it out, it's going to be quite the show for Michigan. So I'm going 8, pretty high in the danger level. Dylan, the only thing that would really raise it, I think, would be if it was a later season matchup. But yet again, that's why we leave some room in the ratings. Maybe it happens again later. How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I've got danger level out of 10, and I think that's completely fair because you're going into the big house, Devon, against the reigning defending champions. Same playmakers are not there. You do not have Corum. You do not have McCarthy, right? Specifically on offense. But on the defense, returned a ton of starters, and that's what's going to take Michigan to the college football playoff if they happen to make it this season, right? So this is going to be a big game to really see how the defense stacks up against one of the best offenses in the country. But I also think it has something to do with Michigan is one of probably the most disrespected champions in college football
Oh,
I've ever
stop.
seen in my entire life. It felt maybe it had to do with the cheating allegations that were going on. Don't
Maybe.
need to talk about that. Everyone cheats,
Have you seen the
specifically all the big
documentary yet? Yes
programs.
or no?
Michigan just had. I'm not saying they didn't do what they did.
Oh
I'm just saying they
my.
did it incredibly well. And they happened to win. Yet, coming off of that season,
Oh my
no one's
God.
very high on them. No one wants to talk about how great this defense is in comparison to a lot of other teams. And again, this is going to be a second half team, and they still are figuring things out on offense. But I have no doubts in the talent they still have, and with how Mullings showed up against Fresno State. I just think hearing from a lot of Texas fans that I know and online seem to think it's a cakewalk when this game should be treated more as an Alabama type game, week 2 of last year going into Tuscaloosa. And I don't think it's being talked about the same way. So I've got it at a 10, and it's not going to be the cakewalk a lot of people think it is. Sorry, I'm so ready for this matchup, and it's just been ridiculous how people have been sleeping on Michigan, and they won the championship last year. Crazy,
I think you need to talk to somebody, Dylan. That was 2 minutes of just ranting.
crazy,
It's okay. It's okay. This is a safe
crazy.
space. Yeah, no, I agree in terms of the treatment of the game, and of course Michigan. It's a new year, Dylan, but as I mentioned before, it's a new year for Texas too. They've not proved anything yet. And then in terms of Alabama, I think people are just riled up because, of course, they lost at home the year prior. But that Alabama game was, a determiner, if you will, of how the season was going to go. This game, very much so, the same way. So that's why we both give it high danger level. Now, Dylan, prediction. I'm going to go first here because we'll just let you take it away afterwards. I'm not going to go too long because, guys, Dylan might talk for
Yeah.
another 6 minutes, so I just want to leave you with him. But, Dylan,
What can we
I've got a semi-low scoring game, but like I said earlier, I think the lower scoring it is, the more it is in Michigan's favor. I got a close one here. I got Texas winning 27-24. I know the spread is a little bit wider. I think it's going to be a close game. Yet again, low scoring, not too great for Texas. A lot of question marks in this game. Can Texas O-line hold up against the D-line of Michigan? And yet again, I think it all comes down to number 3 for Texas, Quinn Ewers. Can he stay calm and composed? Dylan, this is his big moment in this game. He committed to Ohio State and was there for a year. And this is probably in part, what he was looking forward to playing for the Buckeyes. He finally has the chance to do that, but is it going to be what he's dreamed about, Dylan? It's hit or miss. I'm going Texas in this one. How do you feel? Who's your pick in this?
I mean, of course, I have another close one. It's going to be very telling. I feel like it's going to be one of those games where it's going to be close in the first half, and you're not really going to feel any sort of give. But going into the second half, I think you're going to be able to either feel the difference, or it's going to stay the same the entire time. Just because with Texas, and I'm saying it probably very vaguely, but it's like with Texas, their receivers just getting open, right? If they're able to just start wearing down this secondary and the speed is really starting to show, this could become just a track meet and Texas takes off in this game. Or Michigan's grinded out run game with Mullings and Edwards being the big home run hitting running back. If those moments can happen for Michigan, this game can go completely the other way for Michigan, right? But it's going to be, again, that defensive line against Ewers and how he's able to stay comfortable because these are not the same receivers he had last year. They lost 2 top round 2 talents, right? And I Mitchell going in the second round to the draft with a lot of young receivers. This is going to be Ewers having to make the right progressions and the right throws that are handed to him by Michigan. And if he tries to force it, it can go haywire. I've got Michigan winning this 23-20. I liked what I saw out of the kicker, Devon, getting multiple 50-plus yarders against Fresno State. That is something that Michigan, they're going to be able to get into that area. And if they're able to score from anywhere on the field, basically past the halfway mark, I like their chances. And I think Davis Warren showed what he's able to do last year. I'd like for them just to stick with him at quarterback and not throw an orgy unless they're trying to do some 4th-and-1 action or on the goal line in general. But I think he's got the arm to be able to make Texas pay, and with speed at receiver, guys getting open. I like what Michigan's able to do. I just think from watching a bunch of Michigan games, I mean, there's J. McCarthy had 3 to 4 interceptions against Bowling Green one year to start the season. It's just not they're not a first 3 game team, and they're going to look shaky and play a level of competition, which is why they're going to be able to match Texas, Devin. And I'm excited for this because it's time for you to feel what it's like to lose to Michigan.
Man, all that just for that. I mean, Dylan,
Yeah.
I thought you were going to grill me a little bit harder. Now, we appreciate you guys sticking around through some of that Michigan talk. I know it was a lot. I sat here just thinking, why'd I let him do it? But no, he's got the good scouting report, of course, being a fan. And we appreciate it because it's been, Dylan, a video, honestly, about 5 years in the making, just waiting for this game to pick. And so this is the one chance I'm going to give you to pick it, and I'm not going to let it happen again. So thank you all for watching. As always,
Until next year.
as always, have a great rest of your day.